Good evening, everybody. My apologies for the delay. If I can, we want to jump right into our meeting and call it to order at 5:50 p.m. on Wednesday, October 30th. We're going to ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll do our prayer. Heavenly Father, we come today to thank you once again for all that you've done. We have to bless our village, our finances, and everybody that will be able to make it, and those that are maybe en route and travel, and that's everybody has to say, we pray. Amen. Okay, so order of business, we're gonna go this month through the normal financial reports. We did not have any items for new business this month. So on the monthly financial report, as we do on most meetings, or pretty much all meetings, we're gonna review the company general fund as well as the water fund, because those are the two budgets that have the most movement, and we want to make sure that we're on top of. We do have all funds listed within the financial packet, so if there's questions during citizens address, we're more than happy to address any other fund as well, or just anything that may be on your mind. So for the general fund, we will be looking in the packet at page 10. Should give us an overview of how our general fund is doing. Okay, and then on page 10, I'm looking towards the middle of the page. We're looking at the revenue over expenses line without other financing sources. So for the month of September, there was a loss of $427,000. For the fiscal year to date, which is May through the end of September, we have a $1 million surplus within our corporate general fund. Big reason for the September loss is most of the money we got already from our taxes, so we recognize we're going to take losses for the next few months until tax revenue comes back in. So that's how we've been subsidizing a lot of our cash flow in the general fund. If you go down to the very bottom line, those figures represent our corporate fund with the inclusion of the bond issuance that we did to Homewood Disposal. So those numbers are a little bit different in terms of the monthly balance of $289,000 for September loss, and a yearly surplus of $2.1 million. I always like going off of the numbers without financing sources, because I think that the end goal is we want to see how we're doing without the assistance of financing. Questions? Okay, there being no questions from the board, I'm going to go next to our water fund, which is on page 13. Okay, and then we're going on there. We see that for September, we have a surplus $785,000 for the month within the water fund. However, we do have an annual deficit $1.6 million within the water fund. So I think we are all aware that there are some challenges that we have with the building as well as with our collections. The water fund is in many ways our big focus and challenge. So that's the things that we talk to with the administration about. How do we increase the collections? How do we get the building done correctly? So that is going to be an ongoing effort, I guess, for lack of a better word. Month over month financially, we want to know where we're at and do follow-ups. But this is to make sure that the village recognizes why there's such an emphasis on the water, the shutoffs, and making sure that we collect everything possible. So I imagine there will be more questions. I'll await those, but I want to make sure that as a community we do know where we stand and why we're having some of the issues with the water. Any questions from the trustee? Okay. There being no questions on the monthly financial statements, the next two are merely emails that I received from Chris, who is our consultant for our finance department there with the Casper Group. He's emailed me both that we have our bond and the water payments. The bond payment is on track for December to be paid on time, so we are not in jeopardy of missing that bond payment, as well as the water payment has been made to the City of Chicago. And when I say the water payments, every month we get a bill from City of Chicago, we remain current with that. And then annually, we have to make one lump sum repayment from our tax refund, or not refund. I'm thinking I get an earned income credit from our tax revenue that comes in. We make that one payment. We are on track to make that payment. We've received an email today from them that the transfers are being made so that the check can be mailed out. So we are still on track for that water payment to be made to the City of Chicago, which will leave us in compliance with our settlement agreement. Last on the agenda, but definitely not least, we want to go towards the back of our packet, which would be page 34. Page 34 shows us where our water collections are at. So with this, if we go to the bottom right, the grand total in accounts receivable, $4.7 million of outstanding water bills. If we total up looking at the 90 days, 90 to 120 and over 120 days, that's where our biggest challenge is. Approximately 2.9 million of the revenue of the uncollected water funds is more than 3 months old. With that, and I believe is one of our residents, Ms. Wells, had mentioned, as well as I spoke some with our accounting firm about how much of that is realistically collectible versus how much of it is uncollectible, meaning that it may be from 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 2 residents ago from within a household. So there are some plans moving forward to scrub that list and so we can get realistically collectible numbers by comparison. However, if we look month over month, last month we were at 4.9 million. This month we're 4.75. So collections are down or have improved by about 150,000. We definitely know we need to be more aggressive than 150,000. So it's a step in the right direction. It's a baby step in the right direction, I would say. But again, we want to maintain monitoring this so that way, as the finance committee and the board, we have an idea where we stand with water collections and look for more ideas, whether it's from community or the board, and then input as well from the staff on what's being done to decrease that and keep us going forward. Questions from the trustee? Okay. A couple of, well, I won't even make those notes. One thing that we want to make sure that we maintain, or one thing that I noticed I want to kind of bring to the board attention, and then something that we want to look at too as we move forward on our warrant list. There are checks that are coming. Well, we get the corporate payments, and then it'll show manual checks as well. We want to try to make sure we're minimizing. I think the manual checks have kind of increased, so we want to make sure that those are at a minimal, or that's something that we want to watch as the warrant list moves forward. I did have a conversation a few weeks ago with Ms. Johnson, and she let me know the things that are happening, which all are in line with our policies, but it's still one area that you kind of want to maintain or watch, because it could be red flags of last minute preparation and things that we want to be on top of. Having said that, I'm going to bring us down to citizens address so we can ask anybody in our bring about to walk to the are we she's about to walk to this. You want to walk over? Are they over there?
Good evening. How do we know that a lot of this is owed by residents. I mean, a lot of the uncollectible, uncollected. Because see, I'm pretty sure I was in that number when they had put my bill up to $3,688. So if they make a mistake on your water and you don't catch it, you're liable. So before you start collecting anything, I think we should get a true account of what these people actually owe, because they may not owe that. So, I mean, is there any plans for that?
Yes. So I think what we kind of talked about is in line with what you're recommending, and it had been brought up a few months ago. So right now we're pulling the reports. So to the best of our knowledge, these are the numbers that we have. We recognize that there probably may be 5 to 10% margin of error for bills that may have been sent out erroneously, and we always know we get estimated bills too. So if somebody comes in with the actual reading, that's going to fluctuate. But we have to have a starting point. So within the next 2 to 3 months, what we are looking at doing is scrubbing through the list to make sure that people who are truly uncollectible, we write that off, and it'll show up in our financials as a write-off. And for those who may have an error in their bill, the only way that we can really catch that, because when we send out the bill, we believe it's correct. But when people come in and show us that it's incorrect, we have to make the adjustment, and that updates as well on these reports.
But see, excuse me, back to my bill. I'm gonna always get an estimate bill because I never use, the 10 consumptions. So people should stop saying you shouldn't get an actual bill unless an estimated bill unless you're using over the 10. Then you get your actual. Now with me, the first mistake was estimate. Okay. The second mistake, it rolled back the estimate bill, and they say they actually had an actual reading. They did not get that reading from my house. This is what I'm saying. I don't know if they're being told to do this, or if they just don't care and they're doing this, but that's a lot of money. And to lie on my bill and say that was an actual reading, and I tried to bring it to the attention of the mayor, and he keeps saying, oh, well, you need your meter read. Oh, your meter's broke. My meter's not broke. My meter doesn't. I know how to read my meter. That's why I bought past bills from 2017, 2018, 2019. And I was telling him my bill did never, ever, ever start with 20. So who put it back there? No. And it said it was an actual reading.
No.
The best thing, when you sat down with Sonia London, did you ask her these questions and she told you? Did she give you the answers?
No.
What did she tell you?
Only thing, I was just told that they couldn't get in the computer to fix it. I was never given an explanation why this happened.
Okay. So
because I was telling her just like I'm telling you, somebody rolled back the meter. I mean, you can't do better than that.
So my committee meeting, Sonia London, she's the director of the water department. She will be at a board meeting. You can ask her all these questions, and she probably can answer them for you. Or if not, you can sit down with her and get them questions answered if she didn't answer them already.
What can she say? I know what happened. She can't tell me.
Then I don't know what you're looking for from us. We can't.
I wasn't looking for it from you. I'm telling you what's happening. I'm telling you, people's meters are being rolled back. I'll sit down and talk with her for her to tell me the same thing that I'm telling you, because that's the only way I got this $3,000, almost $4,000 water bill, because it was rolled back. So now, if she can explain to me how they rolled it back and miscalculated and then put down there they actually came to my house, now she can explain that to me, and I'll ask her at the next board meeting.
Okay. And if you would like, if you want to set a time, I'll be more than happy to come in with you and sit down and talk about it too.
Well, I got the bill here. We can talk about it now.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
Trustee House, if you can go to page 1 of the finance report. Cash on hand. We got about $6 million according to what I'm reading. If you look on page 1, assets. Right, 4.2 and 1.8, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that in the bank? Is that in one of our accounts?
Yes.
Okay, so is the reason why that is increased because of the ordinance that was passed, that we eliminated the monies owed in that TIF, and therefore it shows a much healthier number that we have approximately $6 million on hand in the bank as we speak?
No, that's not the reason for the elimination of the TIF, because those numbers should, and I'll have to go back and do analysis. But if we look month over month, those numbers should still remain pretty consistent, as well as, and I'll say the TIF.
No, when I say the TIF, I'm talking about the ordinance that was passed that the
Deluxe Funds?
the Deluxe Funds of the monies that were taken out of the account, and then there was adjustment made going back to 2005, I believe.
Yes.
And which was a hefty amount. And you're saying that does have nothing to do with the reflection of that $6 million, correct?
No, sir. And for the Deluxe Funds, because I know some of the concern was that there would be a physical transfer between the accounts, which did not happen. And the tracking of that, if you look at table of contents, page 24 in here, that will also give you the balance in the Deluxe Funds.
Right.
So if you check that account month over month,
right,
there should not, or there would not be a big fluctuation because there wasn't a physical transfer. What the ordinance allowed for is the removal of that debt from the general fund, but
right,
it was not a cash transfer.
Right,
So,
I follow. It was on paper. It was
correct,
an accounting technique used where it's basically a paper.
Yes, sir.
I'll say accounting technique. So
Correct.
we won't get into the minutia of the
yes.
or in the weeds, as they say. The other one I want to ask you about, I got to remember the page, but I'll recall it. How are we doing on red light cameras? I know there was a controversy recently with the red light cameras, but I don't remember what page. You may know it by heart. But when it comes to revenue, so it would be on the revenue page, it looks like a very small amount are being collected. Is it because we're on a payment plan to pay back the red light camera folks?
That is correct. We have entered into a settlement with them. We owe the red light camera, I want to say ballpark $300,000. So before we begin recognizing revenue for that, they
Right.
first want to make sure that they receive the repayment.
I got you. The other question I had, we had, as a former trustee, we had initiated where the crossing guards could get paid to, write tickets to generate some revenue. Where is that on here? I see the crossing guards come under the police department, but the revenue paid to the crossing guards, or is that still in place? Do we have the 3 or 4 crossing guards that are still writing tickets, helping to generate revenue for the village?
It is still in place, to my knowledge. I
couldn't find it on any of these pages.
From a revenue side, because all of the revenue gets reported to the general fund.
No, I'm saying where they get paid. Are they paid out of the overtime?
Oh, the crossing guards, where
crossing
they pay?
guards, yes.
It should be under the police department as a salary expense, but I do not believe crossing guards are separated from all the other union employees as well.
Yeah,
So it's all
they got
lumped up in
crossing
one.
guards, but what
Yeah.
I'm saying, the monies that are paid extra outside of what their salary is that come out of the overtime?
Not to my knowledge. I will have to follow up on
Okay,
that. So I understand your question, but I don't have that off the top
Okay,
of my
let
head.
me know that one. And the other one, I made some notes. Now, getting to the water bill while I try to find this other one, the village administrator came up and said they're going to be turning off about $100,000 a day, correct?
Correct.
They were going to get aggressive, and it would look like it was $100,000 for that month of September that lowered the previous month. So for them to cut off $100,000 a month, and as one of the residents said, there were some inaccuracies in her bill. What's being done infrastructurally so that we do know that that is the correct? I know you mentioned scrubbing the list, which we've been hearing for a while. Infrastructurally, what's being done so that we know that when they're going out and shutting off, and it's obvious they're not shutting off $100,000 a month, I guess that's their goal. Infrastructurally, what's happening across the street for that to happen so that we can get accurate readings, accurate cutoffs, and that type of thing?
And there's one thing, a slight correction. The goal is to have 100,000 per day, as opposed to 100,000 per month for the shutoff list.
Right. I mentioned. I'm sorry. I thought I said 100,000 a month from the village administrator.
Yeah. So some of the things what you're asking in terms of infrastructure, I'm loath to push it over, but I think the Public Works Committee that Trustee Steve is going to have, he'll have Miss London there, and I think she could better elaborate
Okay, so
on the things
I'll
that
ask
are
it
being done.
again.
Yeah.
This last thing, it was one more. Okay, I want to go on record. I was going to hold off on this. I was talking to one of the residents, and one of the challenges, and you very well know this, is that this information, which is why it's only 3 people in this room, most residents don't come to a finance meeting. I know it's cold, wet, and that type of thing. But can I implore the 2 of you that are on this committee to talk to the clerk to at least post the budgets, because the only thing that she posted currently that we have on our website, which is a transparency ordinance, is the audits and, of course, our fiscal budgets. But none of these finance reports are posted. The ordinances are far behind. She's resistant in doing that, and she's also resistant in, what I'm being told by many residents, is respecting FOIA requests. That now she's being written up on honoring FOIA requests. And I'm bringing that to the 2 of you because it would be helpful. As you know, this finance report is about, what, 30-something pages?
Yes, sir.
And it would behoove all of us, if this was on the website, you know, the minute it's printed, and it can be on the site, and then we can print it out and have it available, because the only time they get to peruse it, as you know, once it's handed here. Is it possible that you can implore the clerk to do her job? I mean, the residents are paying her almost $50,000 a year, nearly $50,000 a year, and our website is not updated with the information that the residents need. And I know I sound like a broken record, or as they say, beating a dead horse, but one thing that would be helpful, if this information can be put up on the site, is it possible that you all can implore the clerk to put the information up on the site, as the ordinance instructs her to do?
I will most certainly make a point of communicating that issue, and then also making the request that we get these.
Okay, last thing, I'm glad I read my notes. Earlier this month, you all passed the corporate bills, and the dollar amounts weren't mentioned. Is there a reason for that? You all passed the corporate bills, but there was no itemization of what's supposed to have been paid this month for the corporate bills. There was a motion made to pay the corporate bills, but the dollar amounts were not listed. In other words, the dollar amount for the salaries, for the Melanie Fitness Center, it was just, can we pay the corporate bills? Is there a reason? Is that a new thing that's been instituted?
No reason. Actually, I'm trying to recall the minutes, but I'm going to take you at your word. If so, I would say more of an oversight than.
Check it out. Last thing. I read an article in the Tribune just recently about the mayor's spending when it comes to the credit cards. Now, as you know, when we were trustee, we do not get the invoices for the credit card statements, and I understand there's more than one. Is it possible that, again, with the clerk releasing this public information, which would have been the warrant list, plus the invoices that accompany the credit cards that have been issued to the mayor and his staff, is that possible that can be listed in the next upcoming corporate payments? Because it's public information.
No, I actually have asked previously, and I'm following again with Chris on adding that to the warrant list, because I do agree that that should be listed on our warrant list of things that we are paying. Additionally, Trustee Steve and myself are setting a meeting with the Conspirit Group around just review of expenditures, and not review that in a aha got you, but more so what kind of policies are other municipalities using on the credit card, that make so we will be looking at making sure that our credit card policies are intact, in force, and consistent with what other communities do.
Yeah, because it was kind of revealing. The credit cards being used for Wilma's, being used for filling subscriptions at Walgreens for medical prescriptions and that type of thing. But it wouldn't be up to Chris. The accounting firm doesn't decide whether or not that's released. That would come through the administration, which would, and I don't want to put it on Ms. Johnson, but that has to come through the mayor's office, right?
Well, yes. The things that we talked about is review of our current policy to make sure that nothing's being done illegally, and making sure that we have sound practices, because there's still state law as to how company credit cards can be used, and what elected officials can do to be reimbursed and not.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that we are in line, and I'll say it through finance. It's an area that we've touched on before, but we want to make sure, in particular, given the Tribune article, that we are not ignoring that or making light of it as if it doesn't exist.
Okay, so November, I think, when is the first meeting in November, the 4th? I'll follow up to see if that's been done, because that should be plenty enough time for them to make that decision.
Well, what I will say is, because I had the conversation today with him, and more than likely our meeting is not going to happen until next week. There are some things we want to review in terms of state law and what policy we have in place, as well as they've asked us for time to review other communities' policies. Kasperick is also the finance director for City of Calumet, for Calumet City, but they audit other communities. And we're also going to be looking into our previous audits to see if there's anything that was mentioned before that could have been a trigger or a red light. So I would say November 4th may be a little bit sooner than we would anticipate.
Right.
But I know you, and I know you're going to stay on top of this, so I'm going to appreciate you for being that extra poke that we need.
And the last thing, trustee, is if they could get, and we were told that the water bills come out after the warrant list, which we found out was not accurate. The water bills are not on the warrant list. You know, the monthly $200+ $1,000 that we pay, that should also be on the warrant list. But and I think you can check with the Kasperick Group. It is enough time, and even if it's not for that month, it should at least show for the previous month, like you do with your finance statement. So thank you, sir.
I understand. Thank you.
You walking a little slow.
Good evening. I just want to piggyback on what Mr. Muhammad, I was going to call you Trustee Muhammad, was asking about. And I don't even know if it's your lane to do the water department. Is that your lane in terms of scrubbing the list, and is that under finance? Who actually owns that department? Because that's who we really need to talk to.
So it's two-pronged. What we're doing here is we're reporting what the results are as it comes into the accounting department. In order to do that, they do have, and I'll use Chris as the name but the finance department talks to the water department to receive, and I say they talk through it through the computers. So there's communication, but what we're looking at is the reporting of it. So if you have questions on what they're doing within the infrastructure to improve things, that would be more the water department, or committee-wise, that would be public works. But in terms of how much money we're doing, that would be finance. Oh, scrubbing of the list?
Yeah.
That's going to be more public works. We have to figure out, because we have to identify the people that have the time to do it. Within our finance department right now, Chris and the team are like a one-man shop, and we're paying a pretty hefty price for the Kasperick Group. So we could probably find people within the water department that could do a similar job for less.
That's why I would urge you to make my committee meeting when I announce the date. We send out the email blast. Please come, because you never came to one of my committee meetings. And we'll have Ms. London from the water department here. We'll have the administrator. We have Janice Johnson, and you can hear, because they are doing a lot of cutoffs and stuff like that. So you will hear what's actually being implemented and what Ms. London is doing. Because I just stopped in today. I think today or yesterday was interesting, because she had the water meter readings. She was going down. She said, look, we have too many non-readings. You have to go back out and read this district again. She has a lot of things going over to improve it. So I would like y'all to hear from her instead of me. So please come to my next meeting.
It'd be a nice town hall meeting, wouldn't it, just to address the water bill and department, because there are so many issues in the water department. I know you don't want to have a town hall meeting because people don't come out to committee meetings, but are you going to notify people that this is going to be on the agenda? How are you going to notify them? Because this is a big issue in our town, and we need to not make light of it and make the residents that are impacted by the inconsistencies of the water department aware that we're going to talk about this. And whatever questions you have, bring your water bills. I mean, I'm happy you're going to address it, but it's 3 people here tonight. So if you don't put it out there where people know and understand, this is the day, this is the time, we're going to talk about nothing but water bills.
I'll have a date before the next board meeting, and so at the board meeting, I will announce it, and it will be next week. So
you give people a lot of notice to get ready for that meeting.
I can
I'm
push
being real
I can push
serious
it back 2 weeks, but I'm gonna whatever date I come up with, I will have it at the board meeting. I will announce it, even if I got to push it back 2 weeks, so we can get a nice amount of people there.
Can we get notices like we get for coffee with the mayor and then stepping in the park?
Well,
Can we get
if you've been monitoring it, we haven't been sending out a lot of emails lately.
I got the one about the Halloween thing.
Today, you got the Halloween. You got today. You got the cannabis meeting.
I didn't get the cancer awareness luncheon.
We didn't send that out.
I know.
We had 3. The last 3 emails was the cannabis meeting, the Halloween, and this one.
Them.
You know what I mean? So it hasn't been, and I have to, the coffee with the mayor only been out one time, before the last one. So they haven't been getting sent out as much as they were over the previous year or so. So
got to do better.
We got to do better on all that. So to make that statement that, coffee with the mayor, that's just not true, because I know the emails that's going out.
That's not what I said. I said,
what I'm saying is that
the same type of promotion as you get for those types of events.
Yes.
I didn't say that it doesn't go out.
Yeah, it's the same. It's just
It's
an
bringing
email blast.
awareness to our residents.
We got to get more email blasts. We got to get more advertising for each meeting that we do.
Please do, because
Yes,
we
ma'am.
really need to have people come out. They're real concerns, and I'm not even joking. So I got another question.
One more thing.
Yes, sir.
You've gotten all the emails about the Public Works meeting that I've had before, and you never came. You came. Yes, ma'am.
It's very concerning about the Tribune article that went out about the credit card bills used by the mayor. I know that I've asked at previous meetings about their previous financing meeting under other trustees, and it's never listed on the warrant list. I'm not certain of what type of plan you have in place to make sure that the residents are aware how the monies are being spent. Are there receipts? Who approves it? Because it just is concerning to me that you can have carte blanche that way with other people's money. There should be, or if there isn't a mechanism in place to get approvals to travel, and if you're traveling, why don't we know what you've done? What are you reporting back? There has to be a process. Anytime I attend a workshop for the organization I work for, I have to present a receipt. I have to get approval to travel. They're not going to pay. I'll pay for it myself, but they reimburse me. So that's concerning, and that's only one credit card. How many credit cards does the village have? How many operating credit cards do you know?
Not off the top of my head, I do not.
That should be something that we find out, how many credit cards and who's the signers, and we want to know how many and how many credit lines we have, all of that, because if we don't know who's spending the money, who's signing for the accounts that we have, it's concerning. Are there no processes in place to let the residents know who's doing what and when?
Just a couple of comments on that. Yes, an agreement in terms of policy. We do have some policies. Those are the things that I spoke with our Conspira group about pulling, and we want to review the policies to make sure that they're consistent with other communities and they're the best thing for the village adult, most importantly. Approvals are definitely needed in particular, but you also want to be mindful that the mayor is like the CEO of our organization, so there's not the same level of approvals. We do have to have laws that are consistent with Illinois state law, but we could almost tie things down by requiring, because I think the only person that would be approval for the mayor would be the board of trustees if it had to come before that for every meeting, and sometimes you kind of tie things up. There are ordinances in place in terms of what the dollar amount that can be spent to make sure that it's minimized, but you don't want to tie people's hands so much that they can't maneuver. So we want to make sure that we have fair laws, but not overly restrictive laws, if that makes sense.
It makes sense, but it's still concerning because if we don't track what's being done, then you might be accused of embezzling money, and we don't want to accuse them of that, do we?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so I think that we do want to identify what's being done, and if you're traveling for village business, it should be known. It should not be, we find out in a news article, And if you are traveling for village business, you give a mayor's report. Let us know what you did. So in your policy development, perhaps you want to put that in there, because I'm sure he gets an expense account and don't need to use our credit cards like that. I think that was it. What page is the warrant list? Because I wasn't
The
able to.
warrant list is not included in here.
No wonder I didn't see it.
Yes, but if you were like, well, of course, those things can come through for you, but I can also make sure that you have a copy of it as well.
Okay, that's it for me, because I didn't really get a chance to read it. So next time we'll get it earlier. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I thank all those for attendance. If I can, motion to adjourn, sir.
Motion to adjourn.
And I second. So, Trustee House is aye, and Trustee Steve.
Second. Aye. Also, Tammy Brown, she got caught she was at work in Kankakee, so she couldn't make it. She was just leaving Kankakee late.